From the EPAWA headquarters in South Allentown, Pennsylvania, it's time for Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The following segment is a weekly video blog, and the opinions of the forecaster do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the staff of Eastern PA Weather Authority LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Hey, good Sunday morning to another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, December 13th, and we have been under some very impressive warmth over the last couple days. That's going to continue again today, and this is not exactly what we expected. We were going back maybe a week or two ago in these previous Weather Weekly videos. I'll explain exactly what went wrong and why we were thinking something a little bit different, using a little common sense and using a little bit of atmospheric physics to come up with a different idea than what the models were coming up with, and it looks like the models won this round. So was not the case for much of the autumn, and we'll explain that here in a little bit too. So sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But as far as warm temperatures, those will be continuing today and actually straight up through the 17th. We have it above average, looking at our long-range forecast table. This, of course, is the latest and greatest that we released on Friday. We do have a below-average period here from the 18th through the 20th. I do think we have a 3-day period where we are below normal, actually, which will be quite a shock from some of these temperatures that we're seeing over the last couple of days, especially today. Some places challenging the 70-degree mark, and we're talking about temperatures below average. Well, average right now is in the lower 40s, so for below that, it's going to be one heck of a drop-off between this weekend and what is expected next weekend. This is the period for next weekend that we're expecting these below-average temperatures. And then we're going to have a cold front come through on the 14th. Is likely going to bring between a half inch and an inch, probably close to half, but half inch to an inch of rain here on Monday afternoon and evening. And that's going behind that cold front. It just doesn't get cold behind that. So we kept this period, even though the cold front comes through, keeps it above average all the way through the 17th until the second cold front comes through, and this one's going to mean a little bit more business. That's going to come through, and we'll have to watch this one too, because we were watching for a low to form along that boundary that could bring a light snow event, but still looking unlikely at this time. But we did this on Friday. I can say here, looking at this now here for the Weather Weeklies video on Sunday, it still looks unlikely. So a few ensemble members still out there looking at this and saying, maybe there's something that can happen with this. So we will keep an eye on it just in case, but it is unlikely that once that cold front moves through, it just ends up progressive, and then it just keeps on moving. So no low forming along that front to affect our area with some snow in that time frame. But behind that, we do think that we get it below normal here, the 18th to 20th, and we go back above normal, the 21st to 24th, and we think we get another amplification here around Christmas, or the 20 Christmas, or the day after, it looks like. That's going to take us back to slightly below average. So it's going to be an up and down type thing here. This is, we just had, in the beginning of the month, we looked at this and said, actually back in November when we did our outlook, we said, okay, December is going to be above average, that's fine. But if we do have these cold shots in the second half of December, we time them just right with the precipitation, you can get some snow, just like our analog years had in 1957 is a perfect example. Very warm month, just like this one, but we also had near to slightly above average snowfall across our coverage area, because we had one or two storm events that were timed right with the cold shots that we had. So we will have another amplification here after Christmas, we think. Again, following the European model guidance for this and not GFS, because the GFS is kind of going flip-flopping back and forth and doesn't make much sense right now from the latest things we've looked at. But we do have temperatures in January below average and near normal snowfall in January. Sticking to that, because I think we're going to see a much different setup here in the month of January, and the true pattern change might not take place to the second week of January, but I do think you're going to have a lot more cold to work with for the month of January, and then definitely more snow to deal with. Now let's get into what went wrong. We looked at the Matt and Julian oscillation, and last week, if you were following the video here, we were showing some convection here around the international date line. Now if you look at all of autumn here, the models were not picking up on this area of convection near the international date line, and this is where it has been this entire autumn. Okay, so the models were suggesting different MJO phases. This is because the MJO phase is based on where this convection is along the equator in relation to the international date line, and it was missing out on this convection right here, and it's been doing that all autumn. So when I had this convection out here, which was indicating a phase 4 signal on the models, we were saying, okay, well, it's been doing this all of autumn, And it's been wrong all of autumn. So we're going to ignore the model saying phase 3 and 4, which is a warm phase for the eastern half of the United States. And we're going to stick with the idea that the greatest forcing will be right here along the international date line, because that's what it was showing. See these green contours? This was last week, December 4th. Green contours indicating the best forcing would continue in this area. The brown contours means it's decreasing. So we were saying, you know what, I don't think it's going to go into phase 4. And then something happened. Okay, then we had a Kelvin wave that moved through this area here in the phase 4 region and actually increased the lift available for these storms to fire here. That's all convection is. And allowed this to blow up. And the models did a very, very good job this week of picking up on the fact that that Kelvin wave was going to come through here and enhance that convection and increase the convection here in the Indian Ocean. And at the same time, this area decreased. So by doing that, as we go over to our chart here, let me get over to that. Go over to the chart and see what it does. Phase 4 is a very warm phase for the United States, and that's why we're in this very, very warm air right now. Okay, this is what in actuality what actually happened. This is looking at today. This is December 11th. Still, this convection out here in the southern Indian Ocean. This is of course phase 4 signal, and your dateline convection has dissipated. Just a very little bit right here, and it's actually further east from the dateline here. Okay, but majority of your convection is out here. This is a phase 4 signal here. That's why the eastern half, southeastern part of the United States and the eastern half of the United States is very warm right now. That is what a phase 4 does. Okay, so it's a very clear indicator. We thought that El Nino was going to drive the pattern, and the convection around the dateline was going to drive the pattern, and instead the Madden-Julian oscillation ran the pattern. And this was correct. The models picked up on that, and it was correct. So it is a phase 4. And we see that on the observations that it is, in fact, a phase 4, and that's where we are right now. Here's what the European model projected. The European model is the first model to indicate and that it was going to go into phase 4 and phase 5, which are warm phases. Here's phase 4 right here. Here's phase 5 right here. You can see these oranges. These are all warm phases. The blues will be below normal. That's going to be phase 1, phase 7, and phase 8. These are your cold areas. This is where you need it to be in order for it to be cold this time of year. Okay? And we do think it's going to get there. This is between the 12th, which is today, phase 4, very warm. Okay? Going to stay warm for a while. Then it's going to get into phase 5, and then it's going to weaken a little bit. And then eventually it very quickly goes through phase 6. Phase 6 is still a warm phase. But look where it's going after that. Phase 7. Phase 7. Cold phase. This is right after Christmas. The European model. This is the European model projecting that this is going to head into phase 7. And if you extrapolate this, most likely 7, 8, and 1. These are all the cold phases. So there's no reason to believe that the European model is going to be wrong, because it was not wrong for the past couple of weeks. We just chose to ignore it. We chose to ignore it because of what we just showed you here, thinking that the best convection is going to remain around the international dateline, and the European model was missing that and just focusing on this. Well, it did focus on this, but it was correct in focusing on that, because that Kelvin wave helped enhance that convection out here and decreased the amount of convection available near the dateline. So we got a phase 4 and very warm. Okay, so if you want to know why we do that, so we kind of outthought ourselves there. We do that from time to time. So you're not always going to be perfect in long-range forecasting, but you're going to have the general idea right most of the time. And if those have been following us through the months, a lot of you are just following us now because you're worried about what's going on with winter, and you're interested in winter weather. If you followed us all year long, you would have seen we've done quite well with this, going against what the models say. And now this is going to backfire you eventually, and it sure did this time. Here is what we're looking at for right now, phase 4 again. Your colder weather's in the western half of the United States out here, and your ridges are out here in the east. So we're getting all this warm air here. All right, but when you get into phase 7, this is what you're looking at. Cold here, the ridge retreats in Canada and sets up over Canada here. Here's all your warm and your high. Ridges further west, allowing the cold to cut underneath here. This is what a phase 7 does. So this is what we're looking at going forward. Now this is not out of the ordinary here. If we would have stuck to our #1 analog, December 1957, we would have seen that the MJO dominant feature that month they were not in a favorable phase the entire time. So for us to expect that it was going to go into a favorable phase and run the pattern was a bad idea. And that's where we made our mistake. Here's December 1957 was +3 degrees Fahrenheit for the entire month. We are headed to that again. We're going to be above normal, probably between 3 and 5 actually. That's what we were that year, between +3 and +5, above normal in December 1957. Our number one analog. But look what happened in 1958. Again, we're getting colder here. The warm retreats to the northwest as it heads toward Canada here, and you get the colder down here. And that's starting to creep in our area here for January. So we do think we're going to go below normal once we head into January for temperatures. And if I can get back to this image again, here's what we're talking about. Again, colder here, the warm heads up here. This is just exactly what happened in 1958, January 1958 as well. Started going to a phase 7, phase 8 of the MJO, and everything changed from this to this. Okay? And that's exactly what we think is going to happen again this year, and there's no reason to abandon that analog. And another case in point, this is December 2014, last year. Very, very warm, between +4 and +6 above normal. Virtually no snow. Actually, most locations across our coverage area had 0 snow in the month of December of 2014. And we know how that turned out last year. Some areas were very, very, very much above normal in terms of snowfall. Not as much as the previous year, but still very much above normal snowfall last year, and most of that was due to a backloaded winter. January, February, March had some busy time frames in there. December, not so much. So it doesn't matter that December starting out like this. This is not a predictor of the future. This is not what's going to necessarily happen in the future. And we don't think it will, just by the signals we're looking at. Everybody's making a big deal about El Nino, the super El Nino. Yes, it is a super El Nino. It is declining in strength. We think it has peaked, and it is starting to drop off here. This is a basin-wide El Nino event. Okay, so everybody's like concentrating on where it is. Oh, well, the eastern basins are warming here. No, they're really not warming. They just haven't cooled off quite as fast yet, but we have seen signs that this is going to continue to cool, and those new numbers that come out every Monday should continue to see a decline here in Nino regions 1 and 2, which is east of 90 degrees west. We're already starting to see that. Now, Nino 3 is still going strong here, but with these trade winds, we're expecting this to decline as well. All right, so we're going to see a pretty rapid drop-off, we think, in this area, and then although we're not expecting an increase in this area will become the most dominant area here. Right here. It's probably between 110 and 150, somewhere in there, which makes this a more centralized El Nino. And the El Nino I'm not worried about at all. Everybody's making a big deal about this. The El Nino is not a big deal at all. We're seeing that clearly with the Matt-Julian oscillation and the intraseasonal patterns running this whole show. That's why we were wrong, showing that this cold would come in to stay a little bit earlier, around mid-month. Well, it's not happening. It's not happening. Okay, we're going to get a cold shot and it's going to disappear. Here's a look at that warmth this weekend. And that big ridge, big trough down here in the west here is driving a big ridge here in the east. Okay, all that warm air coming up here. No surprise, very warm this weekend, record highs. Okay, going to next weekend, different story here. We have a quick cold shot though. Okay, cold shot. You got a trough digging down here in the east. So we get a shot of cold air, which is a sign that the polar vortex is starting to give a little bit. Okay, but another trough out here, but another big ridge here in the middle of the country. So we got another warm-up coming in behind it. See what's going on here? So we get a transit here. Cold, warm, cold, warm. They're just lining up. Okay, so it's not everything that comes through is not going to be a long-lasting type deal. And we think, but after this cold shot goes through next weekend, the week of Christmas, we're going to warm up again right up to about Christmas, and then have another amplification come through after that. So it's going to be up and down for a little bit until we get into January, at least the second week of January, and we get some sustained cold. How do we keep that sustained? Right now, the polar vortex is locked up right up here, right over the top of the North Pole, over the Arctic Circle. This thing has not been budging. However, we're starting to get some warming. You need to get what you need to do to get it to budge, or at least displace, is get some warming up here over Siberia, over to the Aleutians and Alaska, you get this area to warm right here, which this model is now showing is going to happen. Okay, the models are now showing this is going to happen. What this does is you get this warming up in the stratosphere in this area. It helps displace the polar vortex. And if you can see down in our area, see how this is staying up here right now, and everything is fast west to east zonal across everything's west to east, fast west to east. It means the Pacific jet has a very big influence. But look what happens on this side here. Once you start displacing that polar vortex a little bit, you get amplification. See that? Amplification. It starts diving down and bringing down some cold air shots into the eastern half of the United States, and that's what we're looking for. This polar vortex to become displaced and elongated so it bleeds down to the United States, and I think that's going to end up happening, but this has a 2 to 3 week lag time from when it starts affecting the lower parts of the atmosphere. Right now, when you're talking about the stratosphere, you're talking about we live in the troposphere. This is the lower livable space, but above that is the stratosphere, and these changes in the stratosphere and the stratospheric warming episodes oftentimes will propagate to the mid latitudes, and that will allow this cold air to start filtering in down to the south into the eastern United States. And we do think it's going to end up happening. Again, it's just a 2 to 3 week lag time. That's what we're saying, probably about the second week in January there, about when this takes effect, that we can get locked into a true pattern change where we just have the cold, and of course the cold's in place, so you have any precipitation chances that come through. We're going to be in more of the wintry variety versus any rain that you would. So it's going to be the opposite. Right now we're really warm, really cold here in January, and I think that's going to be sustained as we get to at least by the middle of January, and maybe even earlier yet. We'll have to see. Sometimes these don't take 2 to 3 weeks. We'll see how well that progresses. But we'll be following this in the EPAWA Premium Forum. It's part of the My Pocket Meteorologist program. You can click on the image below this video. It'll take you right to that to sign up, and we get these updates daily where we update everything in the long range and any changes we have in the short range with short, medium, or long range with not just long range forecasting, but also any storms that are on the horizon. Give you details exactly what to expect for any storm, and we go over an in-depth model analysis. We will be doing that very shortly. We think we're not doing it yet, but because the month of December, again, we're not expecting this to be a very warm month, but we are expecting by the time we get this to phase 7 here, which will be right around about the 26th, right after Christmas here, we could get into a time frame right here where we're going into phase 7 and phase 8. That's going to be more favorable phases here for the Matt and Julian oscillation to take us into a more wintry type setup here in phases 7, 8, and 1 as this continues to propagate eastward. I'm Eastern PA Weather Authority meteorologist Bobby Martrich, and that is this edition of Weather Weeklies for December 13th, 2015. We'll see you again next Sunday.